This story begins in the year 2025. The first intergalactic kaiju invaded Earth and unleashed chaos throughout the city. The armed forces tried to hold off the attack any way they could, but soon after, an unstoppable wave of monsters appeared and began wiping out humanity. To face this threat head-on, the world brought together the best people and the best technology from every country. That's how the Anti-Kaiju Defense Force, the AERG, was born. But even with this elite team having some success, the destruction was insane and the war seemed endless. But then, a very young savior appeared and changed the game. And yes, we're about to meet him. Cut to the next scene. Now we're out of school in the city. The kids were playing at being AIRG agents, but in the middle of everyone, there was one boy who just watched the group, really shy. In the classroom, that same boy was reading a book while listening to his classmates keep playing their hero game. One of the boys noticed he was paying attention and invited him to join in the game. But going against everyone's expectations, the boy gets scared and runs out of the room. Later on, we see him arriving at a laboratory. Right at the entrance, he comes face to face with a robot demanding that its rights be recognized. This robot was Snowman, a prototype of an autonomous bomb. The boy and the scientist just stood there watching everything in silence. Then, the boss of the place shows up asking what's going on. The team explains the situation. The robot, in turn, points at the doctor and says he's the one to blame for wanting the machine to self-destruct against the kaiju. The doctor, named Kojika Yabusame, asks if that's not a brilliant idea, since his invention would guarantee 0 human casualties. Yeah, a kamikaze robot. Hearing this, the machine stomps its foot and says it doesn't want to be taken out of commission. The boy hears this cry for help, and it leaves a mark on him forever. And so the days go by. One morning, the city sirens start blaring, warning that a kaiju has appeared. Back at the lab, Snowman was listening to all the alarms. That's when the boy from before shows up and walks over, staring at the robot. At the same time, in the control room, the scientists were already planning to test the machine in real life. It really tugs at your heart, Ozymet. But in a rush, one of the doctor's colleagues comes in to say they've got a huge problem. His son was inside the robot's control cabin. The doctor tells everyone to stay calm and assures them that the cabin is just for training, so it's almost impossible to pilot. Back to the boy, he's just chilling there reading the instruction manual. When he finishes, he turns on the system and starts walking around with the metal giant. Yeah, in the end, it wasn't that hard to pilot, unless you're a genius, that is. Snowman asks him to stop, but the boy tells him to relax because he's going to make sure the robot doesn't have to sacrifice itself. As he leaves the warehouse, he fires up the thrusters and takes off. The doctor is left speechless watching the scene and shouts in amazement, wondering if his own son is a prodigy. And yeah, he basically is. Shortly after, the newspapers announce the monster's defeat at the hands of the boy. The father gives an interview and reveals that the pilot is his own son, just 9 years old. The reporter shows the headlines calling the boy a savior and asks if he will keep fighting for humanity. Kojika answers yes, after all, that's exactly why he created him. By the way, he was talking about the robot, not his son. And he was flat out lying, since the original plan was to use the machine as a bomb. Back to our protagonist, inside the snowman, little Tetsuo Yabusame was watching everything, shaking with nerves. And that's how, in the years that followed, he dedicated his life to protecting the city from threats. With the time skip, we see him older, piloting a totally different robot and throwing down with the kaiju. And by the way, this machine looks absolutely awesome. The story goes that during this time, he cleared the map of threats until he reached the big final battle, the one that could finally bring peace to the world. That's how 10 years go by, and now we're on ARG's intergalactic cruiser. Inside, we see Tetsuo reading a book about how to make friends. Yeah, our hero really struggles with shyness. Right when he's about to read the first tip, an announcement comes on. 40 minutes until the final battle, and they call him to the snowman. He's annoyed by the interruption, but heads to the mission. After all, he's the great savior. In the hallway, the whole crew bows to the hero. One of the mechanics tells him she left the robot in perfect condition, and another gives him a supportive pat on the back. Tetsuo freezes up right away, not knowing how to react, but says he'll do his best in the fight. But he speaks so quietly and with so much insecurity that it sounds like he said the wrong thing. But it's all good. He keeps going, jumps to the hatch, and puts on a space helmet. He opens the door and floats out into space. Desperate, he calls out to Yukio and asks to get in quickly. And just to remind you, Yukio is the same snowman from when the main character was a kid. And yes, he's a lot stronger now. But back to the story, the robot lets out a discouraged sigh and asks if he ran away from another conversation with humans. Tetsuo tells him to be quiet, asks to get in quickly, and once inside, regrets having embarrassed himself. When it was time to talk to the team, he panicked and just blurted out something stupid. He knows everyone just wanted to encourage him and that he should have responded with energy, saying he'd do his best. Instead, he got all flustered and now he's calling himself a failure. He explains that he ended up like this because he spent his childhood and teenage years focused only on defeating monsters. Tetsuo's drama makes Yukio worried, and the robot asks him to stop beating himself up over every mistake and to keep trying to make new friends. But the main character replies that he doesn't need to, since he has the company of his metal partner. By the way, he's been using that same excuse for 10 years now. Tetsuo tries to justify himself by saying that it's not easy at all. According to the book he was reading, to make a true friend, a person has to overcome 777 obstacles. All of this, according to the author Lonely Awaki, in the book How Even a Kaiju Can Make Friends. The boy insists that the mission is way too hard for him, but Yukio blames him for letting himself get carried away by these pointless manuals. In the middle of this conversation, he gets a call from the captain of the ship. She says that the cruiser will soon reach the enemy army's front line, so they're gonna go over the mission. The moment they make contact with the monsters, Tetsuo will break away from the main fleet. Here's the plan. They're going straight into the middle of the enemy swarm to fire the infinity laser. Field of power? The idea is to wipe out everything within a 100-kilometer radius and take out all the kaiju at once. But the most intense part is getting to the exact firing point, and that's where Yukio and Tetsuo come in. The duo's mission is to fight, draw the monsters' attention, and thin out their numbers. With everything set, the captain says she's counting on him. Yukio gives the classic, "Yes, ma'am," but Tetsuo blurts out an aye, which leaves the crew a bit confused. You can imagine what happens next, right? Tetsuo starts to panic because he didn't answer the same way as his partner. To calm things down, the robot cheers the boy up, saying they're going to go home together with another victory and that today he'll finally make his dream come true. Tetsuo, all innocent, asks if he's talking about that top-quality oil. Yukio laughs, says no, and then he was thinking of something else, but right as he's about to say it, he looks away. Tetsuo doesn't get what caught his attention until it finally clicks. Hundreds of kaiju are coming, each one scarier than the last. This is when things get serious, and the captain kicks off the mission. Tetsuo tells his partner that he wants to be someone important. The team says it's time to go. Yukio warns that the monsters are right on top of him, and the boy lifts his head, ready for battle. His units are ejected from the ship, and he's already gripping his sword tightly. Yukio doesn't mess around and immediately activates the Seven Swords style, slicing through everything with his special attack. In the blink of an eye, several kaiju are defeated, leaving everyone on the ship stunned. The captain, confident, assures everyone that victory's in the bag and gets ready for the next step. Then, while the monsters try to break through the barrier, she orders the infinity laser to be prepped. A giant sphere of energy starts charging in front of the ship, and when it hits maximum power, she yells to fire. But guess what? The laser just disappears. The crew's in shock, trying to figure out what just happened. And then comes the bad news. The system failed. As we know, if something can go wrong, it will go really wrong. The captain even orders a full reboot, but nothing happens. Seeing that things are out of control, she activates Plan B, hold out against the attack, and regroup with Tetsuo and Yukio. But in the middle of all this chaos, the power generators completely fail, leaving the ship totally defenseless. The captain can't believe what she's hearing. Feel the drama. In a split second, a kaiju bursts into the command room and destroys everything. Outside, Tetsuo and Yukio were ready for more combat. Suddenly, they hear a massive explosion, look back, and see the whole ship blowing up. Yukio immediately says the mission has failed, but Tetsuo tries to stay calm and asks his partner to go back with him to save anyone who might still be alive. The robot warns that it's way too risky, but the boy answers with total confidence that their mission isn't over yet. He asks his partner to help him wipe out all those monsters. After hours of non-stop fighting, they actually manage to take down a lot of enemies. The problem is, they just keep coming. Our protagonist is already at his limit from exhaustion, and Yukio's all beat up. Seeing that there's no way to win this fight, the robot says he's going to activate the self-destruct. Tetsuo agrees, saying that this way, the two of them will save the planet. But then, things get emotional. While Yukio starts getting surrounded and attacked by the monsters, he decides to tease Tetsuo, saying the kid never managed to make a single friend. Tetsuo complains, asking why he had to bring that up right when he's focused on trying to find the button to blow everything up. He says he doesn't care about that anymore as long as he can stay by his partner's side until the end. Yukio asks if he's really sure about that, if he doesn't regret anything at all. The boy thinks for a moment and remembers how it was always hard for him to talk to people, which made him isolate himself from everyone. Looking at things now, he tells Yukio that over time, it didn't hurt as much to see others having fun together, so he was at peace. More than that, he thanks the robot for putting up with someone like him for so long. Yukio just stands there watching, remembering that it was Tetsuo who gave him his name, when before he was just a combat machine. Our hero notices the silence and asks what's going on. Out of nowhere, a warning flashes on the screen. The controls have been locked. Right away, Tetsuo understands everything. Yukio confesses that he's guilty of a crime, stealing the boy's youth and taking advantage of his kindness, making him spend the last 10 years without a real life, just fighting monsters alongside a robot. Desperate, Tetsuo tries to take control of the mecha any way he can. He yells at Yukio that life with him is amazing, begs him to stop with this nonsense and give back control. But it was already too late. His partner activates the escape pod, which will be ejected in 10 seconds. Yukio laughs, remembering when Tetsuo saved him and gave him a real chance to exist, and says of course he wouldn't let him die there. The capsule's launched into space and Tetsuo cries, shouting his friend's name. As a final message, the robot reveals his true dream. It wasn't that top-quality oil from before. His dream was for the boy to have a normal life when he returned to Earth, to be really happy and make lots of friends. Crying a lot, the hero promises that he'll make 100 friends, swearing to Yukio that he'll never be alone again. Hearing this, the robot is at peace and finally explodes, taking all the kaiju with him. Yeah, my friends, Yukio went out like a hero. From there, the capsule freezes the boy as he travels through space, until much later it finally reaches its destination. Tetsuo wakes up and, as if his friend were still there, tells him they've arrived. Looking at the map, he sees that he landed in the Tokai region of Japan. The gate? August 8th. He spent 8 years frozen, which means it's been a decade since he left Earth. 10 years is enough time for a kid to become an adult, a huge generational leap. Tetsuo immediately starts freaking out, wondering if anyone would want to be friends with a guy who's been frozen in time like him. The first plan that comes to mind is to lock himself at home and study everything about the current world so he can have something to talk about with people. But the capsule system doesn't show any images from outside, so he musters up the courage and decides to go out. In his imagination, there would be a crowd outside applauding the great savior, and everyone would be dying to be his friend. That way, he would finally fulfill the promise he made to Yukio. Or at least, that's what he dreamed would happen before he opened the door. But when he finally steps out of the capsule, reality is completely different. He comes face to face with a country that's completely frozen over. Actually, it's an entire planet covered in ice. A world that's no longer the home he remembered, but a Snowball Earth. Tetsuo still hopes that maybe only that place froze over. Yeah, like down in Antarctica. That's when he goes back down to the capsule to watch videos of Earth and finds out the whole planet is turned to ice. For our hero, this is just impossible because he was only gone for 10 years and there's no way everything could have frozen over in such a short time. He starts to wonder what happened to everyone and to Erd. And worst of all, what's going to happen to that promise he made? Feel the drama. Here we see a memory from high school. We see Tetsu studying in the nurse's office. Some boys passing by look over and are surprised to see him study in kanji. They comment that since he's the savior, he doesn't even have time to go to school, and that makes them a bit jealous. Tetsuo hadn't even noticed the guys, but just hearing their conversation made him tense up, and he remembers his father's words calling him someone very important, which makes him withdraw even more. Back to the present, it's been 22 hours since he landed on Earth, and now he's starting to get hungry. Tetsuo goes to look for some supplies, but then he presses a button and a video of Yukio pops up. The video reminds him of the wish that his friend would come back to Earth and have a super happy life, making lots of friends. Hearing that really gives Tetsuo a boost. He puts on his coat, eats something, gets ready, and heads out into the world, vowing to make lots of friends, even if they're just snowmen. Okay, he didn't actually say that, I just added it myself. But anyway, with the help of that book he was reading, the very first step is to leave the house and meet people. And yeah, a lot of people already fail at this part. Tetsuo starts walking around, trying to find any survivors. The further he goes, the more he realizes everything is covered in snow. Until suddenly, he sees a living person. Tetsuo gets all excited and tries to get closer, but he trips, bumps into a machine, and makes the man fall and shatter into pieces. That's when things get ugly. Tetsuo notices the guy was frozen, so he buries the man and says a prayer. Yeah, it's a shame for the poor old man, who definitely could have become friends with our hero. Looking at the machine, he sees it still works and uses it as a vehicle. As he keeps going, he comes across a giant hole. That makes him think people must be living underground because it's warmer down there. That's when he gets ready to call for help, but embarrassment hits hard and he'd rather almost freeze than shout for help, until a kaiju shows up right behind him, so Tetsuo speeds off in the excavator to escape. But out of nowhere, the path ends and he falls off a cliff. But the upside is that he managed to lose the monster. When he wakes up, he realizes he's surrounded by a frozen city, which used to be his old home, and that really shakes the boy up. Yeah, just imagine losing everything you know. But suddenly, another tremor starts up. He quickly figures out it's another kaiju coming, so he jumps into the excavator and gets ready for trouble. When the giant monster enters the cave and gets ready to devour him, our protagonist says it's time to move on, starts up the machine, and charges straight at the beast. But the creature is so heavy and strong that it knocks him backward. Even so, Tetsuo doesn't throw in the towel and comes up with a plan using everything he knows. Knowing that the monster just follows a blind instinct to devour, he figures he can dodge it. So he waits for the creature to get close and backs up once again. He analyzes every move. Then, when the beast leaps at him to swallow him whole, Tetsuo uses the machine's claw as a shield while racking his brain for a way to win. The blows directly to the monster end up weakening the mechanical arm and completely destroy the claw. At that exact moment, Tetsuo remembers his father's words. So he gives it his all one last time using the broken arm of the excavator, lets the monster swallow him, and from inside he pierces the beast with that improvised spear, finally putting an end to the monster. And yeah, he might be shy, but the kid's got plenty of courage. After that, 3 people show up and get close to the monster to take a look. When they see it's the whole body of a kaiju, they're overjoyed and start celebrating. But right at that moment, our protagonist comes out of the monster's mouth, covered in blood, and when he sees there are people there, he shouts out of pure happiness. The trio, on the other hand, screams in total terror, thinking he's a monster too. And yeah, the scene must have looked terrifying. Tetsuo tells Yukio that he finally found some survivors. Seeing this, the group gets even more scared and starts praying to be able to defeat him. The leader of the group, who's an albino woman, calms everyone down and immediately gets into a fighting stance. Meanwhile, our hero tries to make small talk, but he doesn't really remember how to do it. Then he remembers the book he got and thinks the move now is to give a smile. But when he smiles, the survivors think he's super suspicious. Tetsuo can't take it anymore and, saying with huge relief that he finally found other people, he passes out and collapses to the ground. Here, we get a flashback. Yukio starts complaining to Tetsuo again for always reading those books that make no sense at all. The boy replies that Yukio doesn't know anything and that the author of a book had 1 million friends. Even with all that, step 2 seems like the hardest and scariest part of all. He tells Yukio that if he weren't the pilot, nobody would care about him at all. And this so-called second step to making friends is simply having to introduce yourself. Now we see Tetsuko waking up. Little by little, he remembers they're in the ice cave and that he ran into some survivors until he turns to the side and comes face to face with the whole group cutting up the kaiju. He doesn't really care about what they're doing and gets up to go try making friends. But then he realizes he's tied up. But that's not a problem for our protagonist, since believe it or not, after piloting so much, he learned how to pop his shoulders out of place at will, and with a quick twist, he swings his hands to the front. And honestly, I have to admit, that's a really good skill. Or is it just me? While the crew is cutting up the kaiju, one guy comments that everyone back at headquarters is going to be super happy to have that thing. The albino girl from before is also pretty pleased, but she can't take credit for hunting the creature down. The leader replies that he's not going to spill the beans about who found the beast, explaining that the albino girl is the higher-up secret weapon, and it would be a huge problem if people found out she goes out hunting without permission. The albino girl doesn't even care about what those old folks are going to say, raising her voice to declare she'll never go down without a fight. The leader sheds a few tears, remembering the day he found the girl crying. She replies that she's not that little girl anymore, and right at that moment, the others show up yelling that Tetsuko has escaped. Meanwhile, he's watching how the crew works. Some use their own way to cut through the kaiju's skin, while others help out by lighting up the place. Seeing this scene, Tetsuko realizes that the group survived by using the monsters as resources, and he starts crying, moved by how amazing they are. Just then, a little boy shows up and comes closer with his toy. Feeling a gentle bump, Tetsuko tries to pat the boy on the head, but stops right away. The boy doesn't really get it, but he jumps up to touch Momville and then runs off. Tetsuko watches the scene and then realizes that an icicle is about to fall on top of them. He immediately runs over, grabs a sturdy bone, and smashes the icicle in pure action movie style. Even though he's safe and sound, the boy starts crying from being so scared. At that moment, the boy's father and 2 twins come over to comfort the kid and thank our protagonist. But they don't recognize Tetsuko, and the twins immediately start asking who he is and which sector he's from. Tetsuko tries to explain, but they bombard the boy with questions and he can't get a word out. Seeing the commotion, the boy's father calms the twins down with a light smack on the head and tells them to leave the guy alone. That's right, sometimes you just have to be firm. The bald old man introduces himself to our protagonist as Takamura, the father of little Yoi. Tetsuko wipes his hand and, nervous as can be, shakes the guy's hand, finally managing to introduce himself properly. After that, the bald guy asks him to wait a minute because as a thank you, he's gonna get him a nice piece of kaiju meat. The twins quickly warn him not to do that, or he might get in trouble with the squad leader, Nishimura. Man, these people really love to stir things up, but the dad makes it clear he doesn't care about them at all. Right at that moment, the team finds our protagonist. Yuramashi suggests capturing him, but the boss puts her foot down and decides against it. It would be way better to focus on dealing with the real threats around here. So just as they were getting ready to help the others, out of nowhere, a gigantic arm appears right above them and grabs the head of the dead kaiju. Everyone is left speechless when they see it happen. It's actually a kaiju with a humanoid appearance. Even Tetsuko himself is stunned looking at the creature, immediately noticing there's an anomaly in its bone structure, something he's never seen before in his life. Feel the tension. The creature is just there, totally chill, licking its blood-stained hand like it's some kind of pet. Meanwhile, Tetsuo tries to stay calm and come up with a plan to win without Yukio or the excavator. His only idea is to ask what people usually do to beat these monsters. But everyone is in total shock. That's when one of the workers loses it and takes off running like crazy. Tetsu yells at him to stop because the kaiju is gonna end up crushing him. But at the last second, Albina shows up and saves the guy. Tetsu is impressed by her skills while she thanks the worker for surviving. Then she sees the kaiju licking itself all over. Seriously, what a disgusting creature. Out of nowhere, the girl slams the worker's head against the ground. The guy asks why she did that and she just says, "For real?" They died under her command. At that moment, Furumashi and Shinjo show up, telling Nogi to save the morning for later because everything's ready. Nagi gets up, yelling that she's gonna tear the creature to pieces, and they activate the smoke machines. Everyone is still confused, and Nishimura remembers the training. This smoke is so they can't be seen by the kaiju and can escape. We see everyone climbing up a net, and Tetsuo feels relieved to see there's an emergency plan. He was already ready to leave, but then he notices the kaiju starting to do something really strange. The narrator says that Tetsuo sensed it by instinct, because he had taken down thousands of kaiju together with Yukio. He knew the monster was getting ready for a heavy attack. The creature pulls its neck back and starts opening its mouth. Tetsuo tries to figure out what to do, since Yukio is really missed right now. Takamura calls him to get out of there, but Tetsu, who never had friends and just took his first step now, sees in them a promise he can't break. Without thinking twice, he runs toward the monster to distract it. Takamura is held back by the twins, while the rest of the group watches in shock at what he's doing. That's when the kaiju cancels its attack and focuses only on Tetsuo. Our protagonist dodges each one of those giant hands, making Nogi wonder why he risks his life like that. Yeah, all for the sake of future friends, I guess. Tetsuo keeps running, but the creature attacks and destroys a chunk of ice that hits him squarely, leaving the kid unconscious in the middle of the collapse. Seeing this, Albina runs to rescue him, but a huge block of ice blocks the way. While everyone else is escaping, they all see Tetsuo get captured by the kaiju. It hasn't even been a day, he hasn't even made any friends, and he's already been caught. What a way to start a story, huh? Albina looks at all that, unable to do anything. But then, Tetsuo wakes up, and the communicator he had with Yukio reacts. At that moment, the cave ceiling cracks, and Yukio's escape pod falls right on top of the kaiju. To get our bearings, we go back a few minutes in the past. On the other side of the city, Yukio's pod finished processing the data, and the control system finally turned on. With that, it located Tetsuo right away and flew over there. Back in the present, Tetsuo is surprised to see his partner. And then they explain something really cool. Yukio had left behind an insurance policy he never thought he'd use, in case death separated him from the two of them. Returning to his real form, he grabs Tetsuo and asks if he's ready to fight in combat mode number 1. And now we go back to the past again, about 14 years ago. One morning, while they were fighting a kaiju, they noticed Yukio's joints were creaking. Their dad said he forgot to do the maintenance, which made Tetsuo mad, but they had to fight like that anyway. In the afternoon, they went back to the base and found out their dad had run away. Yeah, pretty complicated. While they wait, each one has their drink. Tetsuo says that Yukio was his first friend. 120 days after Yukio's destruction, Tetsuo kept looking at their old conversations, trying to fill the emptiness in his heart. He had accepted that this wound would never heal. Until the moment when Yukio started working again. "Man, you're such a pain," says the kaiju, who gets up and attacks. Yukio dodges by jumping and uses the leg engines to land a blow that knocks the creature down. Our metal friend explains that at the moment of the explosion, his personality was transferred to the capsule. It took a while to install, but he finally made it back home. Tetsuo, through tears, welcomes him, and the kaiju gets up again. People still have no idea where that machine came from. Yukio talks to the kaiju, warning that anyone who faces him and Tetsuo will meet death, even without a decent weapon. Tetsuo asks if he really doesn't have any weapons, and Yukio admits that now it's just an escape pod, like the first prototype. Yeah, not everything is perfect, but he's confident they'll be okay. Tetsuo even complains about all that optimism. People notice that he's talking to the machine, and Nogi tells everyone not to get close until he wins. The monster gets ready to attack and makes its whole body shake. Yukio notices that it's in a predatory stance and warns Tetsuo. But then the kaiju slams them against the wall. Outside, everyone sees the steam and the kaiju coming out badly injured. Tetsuo and Yukio stay calm, thinking they barely made it. Then, the creature changes its stance again and everyone gets worried. One of the workers tries to cheer everyone up, saying they're gonna be fine. After all, they've seen someone like this before, right? Who could it be, huh? On the battlefield, the creature charges at him. Tetsuo was already expecting this, pulls a lightsaber out of his hand and gets ready. People remember the warrior who used to protect Japan. Tetsuo leaps in, dodges everything, and uses a sword style to decapitate the giant. Everyone is stunned by how easy it was. The albino girl looks on in admiration because the technique was flawless. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, a humanoid ice creature is enjoying the cold without a care in the world. The crew and Tetsuo take the monster's body to the center, which is where the base for all the survivors is located. On the way, Yukio tells our protagonist how crazy it is to think that the entire planet froze over in just 10 years. Tetsuo agrees, since he was also amazed when he landed on Earth. But when he remembers that he was alone until recently, he starts to cry, thanking the heavens for still being alive. That makes Yukio cry too. And yes, even though he's the machine. Meanwhile, the extraction team was still sitting on top of the kaiju, celebrating their incredible luck. At that moment, Asuka, who was watching everything, asks Ayo if she doesn't think that robot is amazing. However, when she turns her head, she sees that the white-haired girl is already gone. We see Ayo leaving a can of pineapple for Tetsuo. She mentions that they usually eat this to celebrate, as you might expect. Tetsuo gets a little embarrassed, so Yukio thanks her for him, and on top of that, tells our protagonist to work on his communication skills. Nogi explains that this kind of food is extremely rare nowadays since nothing is produced anymore. She opens the can and starts describing the smell. Tetsuo notices that she can't take her eyes off the fruit and wonders if it's right for him to eat it all by himself. Nogi tells him to just eat it already, otherwise she won't be able to control herself. Seeing that this really means a lot to her, Tetsuo decides the right thing to do is to eat it. He shoves a huge piece into his mouth. Just watching that, Nogi lets out a cry of pain. Tetsuo even offers to spit it out, but she says no. It just hurts her to see the amount of pineapple in the world go down. Faced with this dilemma, Yukio suggests that they split everything, so Nogi agrees right away. After they finish eating, Nogi formally introduces herself to the protagonist and thanks him once again for saving everyone. With that, she offers to tell what happened 10 years ago. She starts by saying that everything happened on a totally normal day. Everyone was just chilling at the beach. Suddenly, a humanoid-shaped kaiju came out of the sea, and there were some white spheres floating around it. People thought it was just another ordinary monster. The local guards even thought about taking it down as soon as possible, but they were frozen on the spot. At the same time, this kaiju created more white spheres in different places around the world and kept attacking as they multiplied. Then, the spheres hit a building, exploding and releasing icy winds that froze all life on Earth. Just like that, all the heat disappeared forever. Since this happened 10 years ago, right around the time Tetsuo went to space, Yukio asks what happened to the anti-kaiju defense force. They had a whole team of professionals, but since everything happened so suddenly, only a few were left. The rest of the squad focused on helping people, but the monsters had already started invading Earth. But apparently, not everyone disappeared from the scene. According to a rumor, there's a survivor center where some kind of internal conflict broke out. Even with all this catastrophe, knowing there are still people alive fills the two of them with joy. A while later, Nogi lets him know they're almost there. Furumashi calls Tetsuo by name and asks him to make a good impression. That makes him super happy. That's how we arrive at the Mishima Center, which apparently used to be a high school and is right in the middle of an ice crevice. Inside, people announce that the savior has returned, though some think it's just a false alarm. Tetsuo gets emotional seeing so many people, but he starts to worry that he might not be well received. But then everyone welcomes him, celebrating the chance to see the robot. They ask Tetsuo to show his face and strike a pose for him, which he does, super embarrassed. When he comes down, Nogi mentions that there are at least 200 people living in the center. Everyone has their own role, like the departments of materials, daily life, excavation, storage, technology, and dismantling. There are people who go out to gather resources and others who work on improving the place's structure. Hearing all this, Tetsuo asks which area she's in charge of. She answers that she's in accounting. When he hears that, he doesn't get what she was doing in the middle of the monsters. Furumashi says that she shouldn't leave the place, but she always finds a way to sneak out, which is why the old folks are always annoyed with her. With him right in front of her, Nogi calls her whole team to go together and take the scolding, and tells Tetsuo that the old man will take care of him. In other words, Takamura, who takes the protagonist to check out a hot spring on site. The idea of taking a hot bath after 10 years is a dream come true for Tetsuo. And today, the place will be just for them, fulfilling the goal of taking a bath with his friend. Right then and there, he starts to have doubts. Ever since he arrived at the center, he hasn't seen snow or felt cold. The bald guy then says that as long as he's with him, he should just focus on the water, promising that he'll answer any questions that distract him later. That said, he reveals that there's a kaiju buried right underneath the Mishima Center. But to understand the context, he says that first, Tetsuo needs to hear the story of the monster tamer who saved his life. We go back in time, 11 months after the Great Freeze. The atmosphere is pure tension. The survivors sought shelter in evacuation centers and schools. When the monsters surrounded the place, they would just run off to another spot. But it got to a point where they ran out of food and supplies, so the only option left was to try kaiju mead. Because of that, half the group died and only a few survived. Soon after, they set out in search of a new place. Little Nogi was in terrible shape and was being carried by the teacher, who refused to leave the girl behind. The leaders who had found a new refuge were planning to defeat the monster guarding the place, but then one of the survivors noticed that the creature had disappeared. Everyone was confused until the monster showed up right in front of him. The teacher immediately shouted for everyone to run, but when he looked back, he saw that the group was frozen in place. Turns out another monster was blocking the way. Fearing for their lives, they hid behind an ice wall, hoping the two giants would fight each other. When they went to check if everyone was safe, someone noticed that the teacher wasn't with Nogi. They asked about her, and he replied, terrified, that he had accidentally let go of the girl. Immediately, the leader and his wife tried to go save the girl, but the rest of the group wouldn't let him. Meanwhile, where Nogi had fallen, we see her hair turn completely white. At the same time, a voice in her head tells her she's about to die. Because of this, the little girl wakes up. The voice keeps asking if she doesn't care about dying. Nogi answers no, that she wants to keep living and have a normal life, eat delicious food, and fall in love. Crying a lot, she laments that she won't be able to do any of those things. The voice laughs because it thought it would find fear, despair, regret, and hatred for the humans who abandoned her there. But Aya cries, saying she feels a lot of love for all of them. The voice doesn't understand how the girl can feel something so contradictory and asks if all humans are like that. Sobbing, Amaya replies that she doesn't know, but that's how she feels. She can't hate Mr. and Mrs. Takamura because she's seen both of them share their food with the children. The teacher also takes care of everyone, even though he's really scared all the time. Mr. Kashiki also scares her, but she's seen him cry like crazy every time someone dies. She tells the voice that everyone there is like that and that she loves them all the same. That's when she starts to get up. She remembers when she used to see Snowman on TV and how he protected people. She says that now she wants to do the same thing. The voice responds by reminding her that she doesn't have a savior anymore. She fires back, saying that they have her. That's when she stands in front of the monster, shouting that she's gonna tear it apart with her own hands and that humans are gonna win. The monster charges at the girl to swallow her, but then things take a turn. The other kaiju grabs its mouth and causes an explosion. The voice comments on how pathetic and hard to understand humans are, since even their weakest form says it wants to protect everyone. Then, one of the monsters takes on a form of flames and says it found Aya really interesting. At that moment, her hair starts to catch fire with blue flames. Her team has no idea what's going on, but Nishimura realizes that she connected with the monster like a tamer and became their new savior. The voice said it found the humans' ideas really interesting, so in exchange for her knowledge, it will use its own power to protect everyone. That's how they take Tetsuo to the kaiju, which is actually responsible for keeping the downtown area warm.
That's when a woman named Odatishi shows up, telling the colonel that the people have already come to pick him up. She mentions that it's really cold today, and if they go any farther, their clothes won't be enough to keep anyone warm. The colonel says he needs a heat source, staring intently at that flaming kaiju over at the Mishima Center. Otoishi asks about the humanoid kaiju, and he replies that the creature won't move from its spot. But right then, the colonel stares at the building, and the place ends up surrounded by 3 monsters. The colonel gives Otoishi an order, and she responds that they're the Anti-Kaiju Defense Force, the Light of Urge, and now things have gotten serious. Meanwhile, at headquarters, Ayo tells Tetsuo that the kaiju keeping them warm gained consciousness when they connected, but as soon as it arrived on Earth, it turned wild like the others. She asks the question, hoping he'll confirm her theory. The giant bird wakes up, asking everyone to keep quiet. He warns that without Ayo, no one will understand anything the kaiju says. At that moment, the bird breathes out hot air, and we see Takamura's loincloth fly off and catch fire instantly. Awa comments that as long as they're near her, the temperature stays low, and she also shows that she knows how to use fire. She explains that to adapt to this world, they need to get to know the kaiju, and that she'll protect everyone on this mission. She also mentions that this bird is really weird. In exchange for heating the place, it demands that they read 1 book a day. The creature even chose the name Land of Men because of a book it loved. After that conversation, they took Tetsuo to see his room. Takamura explains that only family members get a room there, and that now Tetsuo is officially a member of the Takamura family. The kid is over the moon with the news. They explain that the family is made up of the father, his son Yoji, and one more person who wasn't there at the moment. But then Tetsuo opens a curtain right as Takamura is talking about his daughter, Rigani. She was changing clothes, and the shock is so big that Tetsuo ends up flat on the floor. Yeah, the main character is just a little too lucky. Later on, he wakes up and sees Ragini fanning him. Tetsuo introduces himself as if he doesn't remember anything. Ragini tells him that her dad went to work and left a letter for him. In the letter, her dad says he'll be back at night and asks Tetsuo to get along with his daughter. He also makes a serious request. Don't let her go to her mother's studio, explaining that they lost her just a month ago. But Ragani ignores the warning and asks Tetsuo to go with her on a tour of the studio. She says her mom was a key figure in the technology department, had her own research team, and used the place in secret. Hearing that, Tetsuo figures her mom must have been someone amazing. Ragani even blushes, remembering her mom with a lot of affection. After that, they change the subject, and Ragani asks for his opinion on an invention she just created. She walks up to an object and raises her hand, which leaves the main character stunned. Back to those guys from earlier, they're still walking away, thinking maybe they should have finished everyone off. The colonel immediately shuts down the idea, saying the eye they got is already good enough. At that moment, his partner lets him know they've received an alert from Artemis. Apparently, Tetsuo, the so-called savior, has returned from space and is now at the Mishima Center with another robot. When he hears this, the colonel's expression changes. He orders that no one do anything for now, because sooner or later the 3 of them will be in their hands, and that way paired will become the hope of the whole world. Back with our heroes, the bald guy shows up with some stuff, but notices the kids are way too tired. He asks what they've been up to. Tetsuo was about to tell him everything, but Ragani quickly cuts him off, saying they just went for a walk. The bald guy doesn't ask any more questions and goes straight to making food. When the table's ready, the 4 of them enjoy that first-class feast, like they were a real family. When night falls, everyone goes to sleep. Well, Tetsuo can't get a wink of sleep because of the snoring, but he doesn't even mind. After all, he finally managed to check off 2 steps toward making the 77 friends he wants. With that positive thought, he ends up falling asleep. On the other hand, Regani has a real nightmare. She dreams about the moment she lost her mother and wakes up in tears. Elsewhere in the city, Artemis is devouring a monster, completely ignoring the girl's orders. The rest of the group tells her not to stress about it. In the end, just having him on their side is already a huge advantage. With that in mind, the colonel asks if there's any news. The girl confirms that there is. She says that Tetsuo and the tamer of the flaming kaiju are together over at the Mishima Center. The colonel is dying of envy. After all, those guys over there have everything handed to them. The girl asks if they should go over there and take him out, since the goal is just to capture the flaming kaiju. The mood gets really tense. The colonel orders them to use everyone as hostages and wipe out the team, sparing only those who seek Urge's salvation. He warns them in a threatening tone that the 6 wolves are going to blow down their little straw house. Time passes, and a week later, we see Tetsuo and Regani finishing up their project. Regani breathes a sigh of relief at the end of the work and admits she lost sleep after swapping out the gunpowder, just thinking about it. Tetsuo asks what the invention is for, but she just tells him to duck. He obeys without question. By now we know he's kind of submissive. Regani mentions that someone used to do this ritual with her and gives him a pat on the head to congratulate him. For some reason, she gets embarrassed, realizes she knocked him out again, and remembers that her mom used to do exactly the same thing. After that, they go eat. Regani mentions that it's been 45 days since her mother passed away, and that, interestingly, she doesn't find it strange to see Tetsuo sitting in her mother's chair as if the two of them were living together at the same time. She remembers her mother's last breath, a sound that still echoes in her mind. Later that night, Tetsuo wakes up and finds a letter on top of him. He reads that Regani left a note, telling the whole truth about what happened to their mother. That's when the scene cuts to her walking in the cave. She tells herself it was a terrible idea to go alone, and feels like something really bad is about to happen. And sure enough, the kaiju that devoured Regani shows up right there. The creature remembers it couldn't eat Hagani before because of the flaming bird, and ever since that day, it marked the girl as its main course. Hagane freezes in fear, but then remembers why she's there. She swallows her terror, says luck is on her side for having found the monster, and asks her mother to watch everything. Artemis raises its paw and slams it down with all its might, but Hagane escapes unharmed with a quick spin. The beast can't understand how a human managed to dodge that. That's when we see the trick. Hagane is wearing Urge's anti-kaiju boots, the version modified by the Takimura workshop. These boots have artificial intelligence sensors that make decisions and dodge on their own, adjusted by her and Tetsuo for fighting in the snow. The beast starts to get closer. Hagane remembers Tetsuo's words. With total determination, she readies the weapon she built and aims it straight at the creature. Thinking of her mother, she finally pulls the trigger, firing the projectile right into the kaiju's mouth. The monster, thinking it's got everything under control and nothing can hurt it, closes its mouth with the shot still inside. But when the thing explodes, the pain is unreal. Hagane explains the sap. The projectile explodes in several stages and releases thousands of spikes that dig deep into its throat and esophagus. Now, even the slightest vibration in the creature's vocal cords will cause unbearable pain. Seeing the monster writhing in pain, she yells that it'll never eat a human again. Satisfied that she got her revenge, she breaks down in tears, remembering her mother. The kaiju, being sneaky, tries to take advantage of her moment of weakness to grab the girl, but right then, Yukio shows up, cuts off the kaiju's hand, and tells it to get lost or he'll send it into space. The monster, still in agony, backs off and leaves the scene. With the danger gone, Tetsuo runs over to check on Hagane, but ends up tripping and falling right on top of her, creating yet another one of those super awkward moments for the two of them. Even though he's embarrassed, Tetsuo musters up the courage to congratulate her on a job well done, which makes Hagane really emotional. But the relief doesn't last long. Yukio looks around and warns that the mist is closing in. He immediately panics and yells at Tetsuo to run to the cabin, feeling like something terrible is about to happen. And his gut feeling was right, because the camera cuts back to those guys from earlier. The colonel is surprised to see that they defeated Artemis, but in the end, he doesn't care because they're still at an advantage anyway. So, taking advantage of the fact that everyone is asleep, the group opens fire on our protagonists. Oh, and one more thing, the albino girl ran away again and they had to drag her back to the base. Back at the center of the chaos, the scene is intense. We see that Yukio has already been struck by an attack. The narration explains that the war truly began with this fatal attack on the Mishima Center, and the last thing we see is the whole place blowing up. We go back 19 years into the past. In Japan, as a response to the invasion of intergalactic kaiju, the ERG was founded, and among the volunteers, Colonel Sagami decided to enlist. He was an exceptional soldier, admired by all his peers. Thanks to his talent and dedication, he became an outstanding recruit. Picture the scene. One night, during a mission, they came face to face with a kaiju, which wiped out several of their comrades and survivors. But unlike the others, Sagami didn't run away. He loaded his weapon and defeated the monster without mercy, once again being cheered by everyone around him, who called him a savior. And so, he kept pushing himself, rising through the ranks and leading missions against the kaiju. But one day, while hanging up yet another one of his many awards, he saw a news story on TV about Tetsuo, a 9-year-old boy whom people adored as their true savior. And of course, our colonel wasn't too happy about that. Not long after that news, the ERG bosses decided to pull the troops and focus on building more robots, which left most of Sagami's colleagues pretty upset. After that, Sagami decided to try out the robot simulator, but he came to the conclusion that he wasn't as good as he thought he was. In the days that followed, he watched on TV as Tetsuo defeated the kaiju, but seeing how timid the kid acted, he found it all way too annoying. So before long, he went back to his duties as a soldier. The commander reported that 3 kaiju had appeared in the city. When he heard that, Sagami remembered our protagonist, which only made him even more irritated. Amid all that chaos, the colonel and his colleagues were trying to save people. Suddenly, a building collapsed right in front of him, revealing another kaiju that was getting closer. When he saw the creature, Sagami ordered everyone to fall back, while he ran away from the monster. First, he dodged a bite and slid underneath the beast to keep shooting at it. When he tries to get up, he gets hit by the tail. He stands up, shouting to the world that he's the savior. But Tetsuo had already arrived and took down the kaiju right in front of him. Full of rage, the colonel points his gun at the boy, but he's out of bullets and has to swallow his pride, realizing Tetsuo just saved his skin. From that day on, Sagami set a goal for himself. He was gonna rise to power. When he reached the top, he gave a speech saying that Tetsuo's presence was a danger and that there couldn't be just one savior. That's why his big idea was to train gifted children, with himself as the instructor. The plan was approved, and in the year 2030, a group of children was formed to follow in Tetsuo's footsteps and become saviors, thus giving birth to the 6th ERG. Sagami was obsessed with replacing Tetsuo with other heroes. Then came 2034, when the Great Frost began. In 2035, the ERG's final battle failed, and the name 6 ERG simply vanished from the map. Back to the present, things get tense. Tetsuo sees a cloud of dust and already senses that something really bad is about to happen. He quickly asks to go up, while we see Sagami arriving with his army and a group of kaiju. One of them gives the order to fire, hitting Yuki with several stakes that explode right after. Tetsuo and Hagane run over to him, while the 6th ERG crew start bragging about their aim. Sagami sees this as his golden opportunity, since now Mishima has lost her most important weapon. At that moment, he notices that Yuma's a bit upside. He knows it's because she lost her kaiju, but it was thanks to that loss that they managed to reach Tetsuo. Yuma comments that it looks like Artemisia didn't make it, and wonders if she'll be any use without the monster. But Sagami thinks differently and tells her to stay in the rear just to observe, making it clear that if they want to be the new saviors, they need to take out Tetsuo and Busani. After all, he's sure the kid is crying over his robot, but while he's laughing at our protagonist, the powerful Yuki suddenly appears out of nowhere and cuts off one of the kaiju's horns. Everyone is left speechless, and Yuki doesn't miss a beat, continuing to attack one monster after another. That's when Tetsuo notices something bizarre. There are people riding on top of the kaijus. Completely confused by the scene, he decides that first he'll take out the monsters and try not to hurt the humans. But just as Tetsuo was about to use his new fighting style, Toichi teleports everyone onto their respective kaijus. Seeing this, our protagonist and Yuki are shocked, unable to understand how these monsters are teleporting out of nowhere. Sagami mockingly asks if he was left speechless and explains that humans only use 10% or less of their brains. But if for some reason they managed to unlock the other 90%, they could even use psychic powers like teleportation or pyrokinesis. Hearing all this, Tetsuo figures out what's going on. Everyone there has mysterious powers, and the connection between them works like a mental remote control. Sagami confirms everything and even brags, saying that thanks to this union, now the kaijus can unleash their full power. After the explanation, Hagane asks why they're doing this to the rest of humanity, but the only response he gets is indifference and laughter. That's when they realize there's no other way. Those guys are the enemy, period. Switching quickly to Nogi, she's with the crew looting an abandoned building. In the middle of the fun, she senses a strange energy in the air. Back on the battlefield, we can tell from Sagami's thoughts that he's dying to finish off Tetsuo and then go after Mishima. Hagane asks Tetsuo what the plan is, but he's already completely focused on that complicated situation. Our savior uses all his intelligence to make a decision, while Hagane sees him gripping the controls tightly. At that exact moment, Sagami notices something and tells Otoishi to send a message to each pilot saying the color orange. Otoishi doesn't really get it, but Sagami urges her on. So she pulls out a deck of orange cards and lines them all up in the air. The story tells us that Otoishi Kinoe, the tamer of the Kaio Hermes, makes each card appear in front of the other pilots with a clear order: assume the predator stance. The guy in costume is surprised to see the orange warning, commenting that even he could take care of that in just a few seconds. Even so, everyone follows the order and gets into attack position. Taking advantage of the moment, we get to know each member's Kaio in the team. The blonde guy has a deer named Eros, the light blue-haired one has a dragon named Eris, the one in costume controls a turtle named Hephaestus, and the white-haired girl has a snake named Aphrodite. They all start to close in, and Yukio also gets ready for the impact. Tetsuo is still there, totally focused. But then, the unthinkable happens. The Kaios go right past, ignoring the snowman. They say the mission is the priority and that they're pulling out of there. But one Kaio stays behind, carrying Sagami, Yuma, and Otoshi on board. Sagami has no doubt they could have won, but if the fight had continued, at least 3 Kaios would have been destroyed, and he can't make that mistake. That's when he throws out a taunt and asks Tetsuo where he thinks the monster horde is headed. Hagane comes to the worst possible conclusion. They're heading for the Mishima Center, and they've only got 5 minutes to catch up to them. Now, the challenge is brutal. They have to defeat the enemy within that time, or they won't be able to save the city. Sagami starts counting the seconds Tetsuo stood still, and tells him he's already lost 10 seconds. He laughs in Tetsuo's face, calling him a hesitant warrior, while bragging that his team will be the new generation of saviors. Right at that moment, Snowman charges in to get him out of the way, but suddenly a powerful blow comes from underground. That's when things get serious, and the boss shows up. Sagami's Kaio enters the scene, a giant centaur named Hercules. That was the end of the episode. Comment the phrase Part 7 so I know you've made it this far and want to see how this drama unfolds. I'll give your comment a heart. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter, because the hype is just getting started. Without further ado, Ribabina says goodbye. See you next time.